We see injustice and crisis today.
We saw unfairness yesterday.
We still see prejudice and fear.
But we have fought for change.
Year after year.
We've always had something to say.
Stood up,
Spoken out.
raised our voice.
Shone a light.
Spoken truth to power.
Born to fight.
Together, we've used our business for good,
For fairness.
Equality.
for kindness.
For love.
Because we are the dreamers.
Believers.
The rebels.
We are the ones that can make a difference.
Standing together.
We hear your voice.
Standing together.
We won't drown you out.
We won't tell you.
That you cannot be.
So tomorrow.
Like yesterday,
And like today.
Be seen.
Be heard.
And let's make real change.
Okay, guys, take your seat now. Okay, again, I want to make some reminder again. This section, your statement all will deliver in English, right?
we see injustice and crisis today.
We saw unfairness yesterday.
We still see prejudice and fear.
But we have fought for change.
Year after year.
We've always had something to say.
Stood up,
Spoken out.
raised our voice.
Shone a light.
Spoken truth to power.
Born to fight.
Together, we've used our business for good,
For fairness.
Yeah.
Equality.
for kindness.
For love.
Because we are the dreamers.
Believers.
The rebels.
We are the ones that can make a difference.
Standing together.
We hear your voice.
Standing together.
We won't drown you out.
We won't tell you.
That you cannot be.
So tomorrow.
Like yesterday,
And like today.
Be seen.
Be heard.
And let's make real change.
Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are about to begin, please be seated. I request all of you to kindly switch your mobile phone setting to silent mode. Also, please bow if you would like to leave or enter this hall. Welcome back to Youth Parliamentary Debaton 2023, organized by Malaysia Kini and Kini Events, supported by Parlimen Malaysia and Ministry of Youth and Sports. Motion topic 2 for today is Malaysia for Sustainable Forest Management over Zero-Deforestation. This motion topic is brought to you by Malaysian Timber Certification Council and will be chaired by Yang Berhormat Puan Syerleena Abdul Rashid, Member of Parliament Bukit Bendera. For your information, today's debaters are about 100 youths aged between 16 and 25, and they are from all over Malaysia. Not only the youth, we are pleased to also have politician special guests to join them, and they are YB Datuk LANGSUNG, Member of Parliament Julau, YB Teresa, Member of Parliament Seputeh. At the end of today's session, we will also select and announce the best debater, and for that, I would like to introduce the panel judges for this session. They are Puan Sabrina Mawasi, Deputy Chief Executive Officer, MTCC, Emilia Sharif, CEO of MIDP, and Diana Rose from Kini Events and MKini Group. Without further ado, I would like to invite Puan Sabrina Mawasi, Deputy Chief Executive Officer, MTCC, to give opening remarks. Puan Sabrina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. Yang berbahagia Puan Syerleena Abdul Rashid as Yang di-Perdana Speaker, Yang berbahagia Datuk LANGSUNG, Yang berbahagia Puan Teresa, wakil-wakil daripada Parlimen Malaysia, wakil-wakil daripada Kementerian Belia dan Sukan, rakan-rakan bersama, rakan-rakan media, rakan serta para pendebat. Assalamualaikum, selamat pagi dan salam Malaysia Madani. Saya mohon izin untuk meneruskan ucapan saya dalam bahasa Inggeris. Allow me to begin by first expressing my gratitude and congratulations to our hardworking team at the Malaysian Timber Certification Council, MTCC, and Malaysia Kini Events on organising the Youth Parliamentary Debaton 2023 that we are having here today. The timber industry is the third largest contributor to the agri-commodity sector after oil palm and rubber. However, it faces numerous challenges that are influenced by politics, economy, climate change, and such as shortage of raw material. One issue that becoming more and more challenging is dispute pertaining the sustainability of our forests. In October 2001, MTCC began operation of its timber certification scheme known as Malaysian Timber Certification Scheme, MTCS in short. This scheme was and is Malaysia's answer to the sustainability of our timber and timber products. 8 years later, in 2009, MTCS was endorsed by the Programme for Endorsement of Forest Certification, PEFC, which is the largest forest certification system in the world. As a result, this endorsement gave the MTCS even greater credibility for the world to see. Malaysia has been practicing sustainable forest management since 1901 and has laws such as National Land Code 1965, Protection of Wildlife Act 1972, and the Environmental Quality Act 1974 to protect habitats, provide sanctuaries, and maintain ecological stability. It is also adopted a national policy on biological diversity in 1998 as part of its commitment to operationalize the Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD, adopted at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, UNCED, in 1992. The hallmark of this certification lies in its capability to deliver the transparent, well-structured, and continuous oversight through independent certifiers, ensuring effective stewardship of forest resources. According to a study released by Washington-based Global Forest Watch, Malaysia's current effort and commitment to deforestation are heading a positive direction. Since 2017, forest loss in Malaysia has been a downward trend, with the expansion of oil palm plantation taking place on land previously used for other crops. One of the key reasons for the declining trend of forest loss, that is, oil palm corporation in Malaysia are committed to a no deforestation, peat and exploitation or NDPE policy. However, Malaysia's effort towards a green economy does not end there. The dynamic demand of the market has now voiced new need, which is zero deforestation. For decades, the West has been putting pressure on developing nations like Malaysia to go down the path of zero deforestation via sanction and trade restriction. The EUDR, which is part of the EU Green Deal, and a broader EU strategy to protect the world's forests closely relates to the action brought forth by the EU timber regulation, by the Forest Law Enforcement, Government and Trade Regulation, FLEGT in short. Hence, this begs the question, is sustainability forest management adequate, or shall we be moving towards zero deforestation? I am certain that the Malaysian youth I see before me are more than capable to dissect and elaborate on this issue through brilliant ideas and substantial mature input. I value and welcome the participation and involvement of our young people in the forming of a developed and harmonious Malaysia Madani. With this, I hope this program will bring much benefit, especially to the participants. I wish all the debaters good luck and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Puan Sabrina, for the speech just now. To start this debate session, I will now hand over to the Secretary of the House of Representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise.
Abhishek Prasad, anak lelaki Mahendran, akan mengemukakan usul.
Terima kasih, Puan Speaker. Izinkan saya mencadang bahawa persidangan ini mengambil ketetapan agar menimbangkan pengurusan hutan mampan berbanding penyahutanan sifal. Izinkan saya berucap dalam bahasa Inggeris, Puan Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the House, fellow citizens, today we are faced with a challenge to find the best way forward to manage our forests to alleviate the pressures of number 1, deforestation, number 2, depletion of forest resources, number 3, habitat destruction, number 4, maintaining the forest ecosystem, and number 5, mitigation of the implications that deforestation poses on the climate. Thus, I suggest that the motion of today be that whether the government should look towards a sustainable forest management approach to address the aforementioned concerns alongside the woes of the economy, or rather a zero-deforestation approach. We, the government, however, stand by this method of sustainable forest management. Now, ladies and gentlemen, while the call for zero-deforestation is rooted in noble intentions, it is essential to recognize that the path towards achieving environmental harmony is a complex one and requires a balanced approach that sustains both our natural resources and economic well-being of our nation. For context, ladies and gentlemen, the logging industry in Malaysia contributes 23.3 billion to our economy, making up 3.6% of our GDP. This industry also employs 140,000 Malaysians. Before we leave this hall today, esteemed members of the Parliament, these are the Malaysians that we should keep in mind because we are answerable to them. Now, while the call of zero-deforestation stems from genuine concerns about our planet's health, it is crucial to acknowledge that a blanket ban on all deforestation activities might inadvertently push these activities into unregulated and clandestine territories. This could lead to loss of biodiversity as well as deforestation and habitat destruction. Now, members of the House, how are we going to do this? Our main frame consists of two parts. The first being the scheme that will be introduced to regulate the policy, and the second will provide indicators that will be used to allocate the land, as land is under the state jurisdiction and the federal government has no power over it. Now, moving to the first part, which is the policy. How the government is going to implement is because we are going to take an existing framework called Malaysian Timber Certification Scheme, MTCS. Okay? Right now, this scheme is currently opt-in, and major players in the game with good track record are committed in this scheme. This is proof that it is good and working and that companies are willing to work in rebuilding our future. Our suggestion as the government, we make this scheme compulsory. Now, what does this scheme entail? Number 1, we'll only allow logging on allocated land. Number 2, we'll set strict criteria for tree selection, meaning only trees that are mature and that can actually be used for production will be cut down, which is based on the tree trunk width and circumference. Number 3, we'll include a special condition for replanting of the trees, and a simple question that the opposition might ask us. How are we going to make sure that companies adhere to these provisions? Simple answer from the government bench, we will revoke their logging license to operate as a logging company in Malaysia if they fail to adhere to these provisions. Now, the second part of this scheme will involve negotiations and meetings through the National Land Council with respective state governments to discuss the matter of land. How this will go is that number 1, we will inventarize our forest resources. Number 2, we will involve stakeholders. This includes local communities, state government and businesses. Number 3, we will define our management goals. Number 4, we will zone the forest. And number 5, we will gazette the allocation of land to the people via the state government. That is all from me. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Ada sesiapa yang menyokong? Ahli-ahli perwakilan Debaton Parlimen Belia Malaysia, masalah sekarang ini terbuka untuk dibahas. Syanggari anak perempuan Chanterelle Velu daripada Barisan Pembangkang.
Terima kasih, Tuan Speaker. Izinkan saya berbahas dalam bahasa Inggeris. We get the government side's mechanism. However, we would like to ask, what is the difference between the mechanisms that sustainable forest management had implemented before this, all of these years that it has been going on? What is the difference? And even if this is going to be continued with all of your mechanisms, in all of these years, do you know that the worst floods and the worst landslides have occurred in very recent years? In fact, for example, in all these years, the worst flood was very recent in the year of 2021 to 2022. It has affected 12 states, displaced over 700,000 people, killed at least 53 people, and this was because of deforestation. It was because the cleared forest could not absorb the rainwater, causing the rivers to overflow and flood the surrounding areas. And in fact, sustainable forest management has been adopted since 1901. And it had always been, and the government had always said that they have been improvising and improvising. But how effective is this? When are we going to take the next step? And moving on to that, I would like to also talk about the landslide. I'm not accepting for now. It has also killed over 31 people, and 7 of them were injured. Why? Because of deforestation, because the roots could not hold on to the soil at the hillsides. And are we going to continue deforestation? We get that the government side is going to only deforest on certain areas, but is that effective enough? Please tell us of your past achievements and how it has actually improved the lives of the people in the current era. And moving on to that, let us present our mechanism. In our world, we will be implementing the zero-deforestation, which means halting all logging activities after a transition period of 1 year, because we want to allow the people to adapt to the change. And another thing that we would like to talk about is that actually, the sustainable forest management, according to Datuk Dr. Jalaluddin Harun, who is the Director General of Malaysian Timber Industry Board, MTIB, had said that back in Japan, in their International Symposium of Deforestation-Free Global Supply Chain, they have said that, in fact, sustainable forest management is a way towards zero deforestation. Sustainable forest management will not be our only way, will not be a forever option. And we want to emphasize this is because sustainable forest management, zero deforestation is in fact the fastest way in order for us to reach our global commitments. For example, the Paris Climate Agreement. It was said that by the end of 2030, we have to ensure that countries keep 1.5 degrees Celsius to 2 degrees Celsius of change. However, in order to get a 66% chance of reaching this commitment, we actually have to have an annual mitigation potential which is of 4 gigatons every year. So how are we going to ensure that this much of emission is not produced by our country? And zero deforestation is definitely the way in order to... Yes? Ahli Sesen?
Dengan izin Madam Speaker, the opposition made points about 4 gigatons. I don't know where the opposition is quoting those figures from. The Malaysian carbon emission is at 265 million at 2021. And even if we, with the current forest status, which is the forest coverage in Malaysia is at 47%. Even if we cover the entirety of Malaysia, and the 47% only absorbs 185 million tons of carbon emission. So even if we cover the entirety of Malaysia with forests, it would not be sufficient to absorb the entire carbon emission that's currently being emitted by the manufacturing industry. So what is the point the opposition is trying to make?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. However, we know that we need even more initiatives to be taken. We can, of course, plant more trees. It will definitely increase the forest coverage. But why do you want to go for zero deforestation? Why do you want to go for sustainable forest management, which also increases even more deforestation? Why not we totally halt deforestation and also plant new trees.
Terima kasih atas peluang. I would like to saya ingin mencelah dalam bahasa Inggeris. It is important for us to note that we need to still consider economic profitability in terms of feasibility. So, there is a solution without deforestation, which is having new revenue source for carbon credits. I would like to quote new revenue source for Sarawak in carbon credits, an article from the Star in March 16 this year. Premier Sarawak Datuk Patinggi Abang Johari said that we can actually introduce carbon trading schemes that will actually give us source of revenue from RM 315 million to RM 1.04 billion in the next year. So this is something that we can consider as alternative from deforestation because we are facing climate crisis today. And I would like to say, kita akan menghadapi kiamat iklim pada 2040 menurut ikon iklim kita pada hari ini. Terima kasih.
Okay, at this point of time, we have to see what is more important to us. Is it the lives and the well-being of the people?
Sorry, your time has exceeded, by the way.
Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
So now calling for the next speaker, debater, Bentani Ui Si Kwan dari Barisan Kerajaan.
Berkhidmat demi rakyat tanpa lelah bekerja, ekonomi negara meningkat, rakyat berbahagia. Puan Speaker dengan izin menggunakan bahasa English. The opposition emphasized a lot on climate change and the effects of it. We concur that it is a huge issue. However, I would like to prove that sustainable forest management will be more effective in combating climate change and also flash floods. Under our sustainable forest management scheme, we will also be implementing a mandatory forest replenishment and also replantation initiative that companies has to abide to. Replantation and replenishment of forests will follow the ratio of 1 forest chopped down and 3 trees have to be replanted back. Right. Ladies and Madam Speaker, as the research has found, $2,400 will be needed, which is 11,000 Malaysian ringgit, will be needed to replant a hectare of trees. Our policy not only may slow down the deforestation rate that we're currently facing, it will also replant forests more effectively and efficiently as compared to opposition side. As instead of the financial burden fully opposed on the government, it will be shared with the companies involved as a stakeholder. This translates to more fund and more trees to be planted. No, thank you. Madam Speaker, as the Minister has explained, the timber industry is a huge industry and has a huge impact into our GDP. However, I would like to talk about the people on the ground, the people who are working in this industry. 140,000 people are working in the timber industry. It is not a small number. It is the half of the population of Perlis. Ladies and gentlemen, these people have children and family to care for. It is simple to say, oh, it's going to take 1 year for us to upskill them, reskill them, to go into a higher industry. If it is really that easy for us to reskill and change them into a new industry, why wouldn't have they done it decades ago? There's a reason why I say that, because it takes time. It takes time for us to transition them into a higher paying industry. The reality is that, the reality is if we were to implement a no deforestation policy and they lose jobs, people will lose their jobs in a nightfall. Will the opposition be responsible of that? I, for one, representing the government, we do not want to be responsible of people losing their jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, I care for the people and their welfare. Maybe I can't say the same for the opposition. Right, I'll take one from...
Okay, so we'd like to ask, then if let's say the government wants more time, then when do you plan to implement zero deforestation if you need more time? It's been so many years that you have been going through sustainable forest management. So when is your big leap going to be taken?
Thank you so much for our leader of opposition. As I have said in my speech just now, I'm not sure if you guys are listening or not, it proves that we are much more better in replenishing and replanting the trees. We can have more fun replenishing trees. Why not go for sustainable forest management? No, thank you. We believe that the implementation of this law will further improve our palm oil industry. Malaysia is one of the biggest palm oil producers, and we have faced huge issues due to the European Green Deal, a huge market getting blocked. So what's the problem here? Unsustainable deforestation. It is true that no deforestation can help us re-enter the market. However, if we go to sustainable deforestation, sustainable forest management, not only that we can re-enter the market as we have sustainable forest management, but we can also expand our oil plantation in a sustainable way. Now that will have the rise of exports and also production. Yes, I'll take one. Yeah. Yang bawah main kat sana tu.
Can I pass to my friend? No, cannot.
Sorry, you want to pass to your friend?
Okay.
Is it okay?
Don't know why you stand up, but okay.
Why not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so previously you mentioned that you would have each company, for each tree they cut down, they have to replenish 3 different trees. So that in of itself is a way of net zero deforestation, which is what our side is trying to push off. We want to have zero deforestation. And side government, you have also failed to give your definition of what exactly is deforestation. Side opposition is not trying to say that, okay, no more palm plantations, no more agriculture. That's not what side opposition is trying to say. Side opposition is trying to say that we do not want to clear any more land that we already have. We want to use what we have and use it well.
No thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, we understand the agriculture industry will not be effective, but as my Prime Minister have said, have you guys not listened that the timber industry itself is a huge contribution to our economy? That is a huge problem. We can replant more. Yes, sure, no deforestation can replant more trees. I accept that. However, in the side of a government, we will share the funding and resources with these companies. Hence, we have more fund, more trees can be planted. Isn't that a good thing? We have to push for this. Ladies and gentlemen, we are one of the lucky nations that have green lush forests. Why not we utilize it? We have to take advantage of it, use it. We cannot and should not push for a no deforestation policy. Instead, a sustainable forest management where we can utilize our gift from God responsibly. I'll take one. Yes.
Okay, so the side government has mentioned that the logging industry is a big contributor to the Malaysian economy. In fact, making up more than 23.3 billion in its industry. However, what is also true is that the government can diversify away from reliance on logging instead of simply cutting down more trees. Let me just mention that Malaysia has gazetted 2.3 million hectares of forest. This is more than Penang, Malacca and Perak combined, by the way, and also most of the most developed countries in the world, such as Saudi Arabia, are already diversifying away from oil, reliance on oil. So why can't Malaysia do the same? Why do you want to continue with sustainable forest management?
All right. If it is that easy for us to transition our industry to another industry, to open up new industry, Malaysia would have been one of the richest nations in our country. If it is really that easy for transition these people into a new industry, that is impractical and side opposition is delusional and not living in a reality. With that, I would like to end my speech. Thank you very much.
All right, moving on. I would like to call the next debater, Nasiruddin Hanif bin Muhammad Nazri daripada Barisan Pembangkang.
Testing. Terima kasih Puan Speaker. Dengan izin untuk menyampaikan ucapan saya dalam bahasa Inggeris. Zero deforestation will not leave a huge dent on the economy. It even has the chance to force the economy to adapt into other higher income industries. 3 things I'm going to prove in my speech today. Firstly, why logging economy isn't that important in the first place. Secondly, how our economy can compare to a similar country. And finally, how removing the logging industry can possibly lead to more economic growth in the economy. And if I have time, I'll cover a bit of a thought experiment to actually cover the worst case scenario in our side. First of all, why is the logging economy isn't that important in the first place? The Prime Minister mentioned that it's 3.6% of the economy. And we actually, from our data, from our research, we actually got from the World Bank themselves that it is actually 1.7% of the economy only that actually encompasses this forestry industry. And next is that in recent years, it has been going on a downtrend and reaching an all-time low of 1.7% in 2021. Note that if, let's say for example, we take the worst case scenario of 3.6%, right? If we remove this 3.6% from Malaysia's economy, Firstly, we will hardly feel it then because it's like 3.6% only. Secondly, in 2022, Malaysia's economy percentage of growth of GDP went up by 8.7%. This is more than enough to cover the 3.6% that they are claiming on their side. Here's a comparison between Malaysia and Brunei. Note that Brunei has more forest coverage at 72%. In Malaysia, we have less forest coverage at 58%. Secondly, their GDP per capita is like 3 times higher than ours at $37,000 compared to ours $12,000 per capita. And thirdly, that their forest land, their annual revenue from forest land was at 0.0% in 2021. This, by virtue, they should, with more forest coverage, they should have more of their economy based on in forestry. Yeah, Ben.
So as Yang Muhammad have already stated, right, that we can transition our logging industry to other industry, right? Am I right? Right. So it's as easy as this. I think the government should support your motion, but as long as you can prove the mechanization on the reality and the logic of being able to transition into a new industry in 1 year time. If you can prove to that, sure. I guess maybe deforestation. No,
I'll give the floor to Shamira.
I think Yang Muhammad keeps talking about replenishing. You have to understand that the government is talking about sustainable forest management. You are cutting down the trees at the age of 25, 50, 100 years old. Are we going to wait for another 25, 50, and 100 years old to protect the whole nation again? Because the flash floods are causing from the deforestation. And you have to understand the government is actually spending 15 billion ringgit per year for flash flood implementation. So are we going to wait for another 25 years for the trees to actually grow and also to, to avoid flash flood from happening again? Are we going to spend 15 billion ringgit each and every year for the 20 years, 25 years, waiting for the trees to go to just continue in sustainable management policy? If you can justify the fact that you are be able to overcome the 15 billion ringgit that we are actually investing much more, and which you can actually save. You are talking about unemployment and where people can lose job in the timber and also logging industry. You can actually use the 15 billion ringgit that you are investing in flash flood by actually implementing zero deforestation and invest that money in various different industries.
Sorry, I need to finish my extension first. Okay, this next point directly engages with Ben's points. Okay, how does the removing of forestry in the economy can lead to more growth in other industries? Note that the forestry economy in the first place only has a marginal slice in the GDP. This means that the surplus of manpower, the surplus of funds can be reinvested into other parts of the economy. In 2021, the GDP from the information and communication sector in Malaysia amounted to around 96.25 billion Malaysian ringgit in comparison to the measly amount that they are defending on their side of the house. Next, we already have the infrastructure to make these people, to adapt these people into these other industries. For example, like community college, TVET, free courses by a lot of companies that give their free courses, Google, IBM, and also the worker incentive program, which 17,000 workers got jobs from in 2020. Meaning that if the government were to relocate all of the manpower from the forestry industry by educating them to be incorporated into higher income industries such as the information and communication sector, hypothetically, there will be more return on investment. Now, lastly, wait, I have one last extension. Let's have like a thought experiment. Worst case scenario, that their 3.6% that they are trying to defend is so important to the point where it is the backbone of society. Note that natural changes happen to the economy time and time again. Film camera moving into digital camera, like the digital revolution, all of it. And each and every of these changes has destroyed a couple lines of work in exchange for progress. And note that for each of them, we have a net positive return in terms of productivity, economy, and sustainability. This is applicable to what side opposition is fighting for, i.e. a more sustainable future, a better environment in exchange for a marginal part of the economy. Due to the fact that this type of change has been time and time again, and it is inevitable, and it can be applied here to save our forests. Yeah, I'll take one from the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Opposition Speaker. Okay, so there's a lot of things to unpack here right now. Okay, so first, the allegations have been shown to the government here, right? Why hasn't the scheme been working and before? Okay, so first of all, right now, we are in an unprecedented time. We have to accept that this is a situation that our generation is facing, not the generation of our forefathers, right? So now, we as the current government are making a stand to make MTCS, which has been pushed by an NGO, into the government, to politicize it into a bill so that we can enact this bill and we can charge companies for it. That is the action that the government is taking now. Now, about the age of the trees, right? So, following MTCS, if you guys actually read up about the scheme, it says that once the trees have been replanted, we will wait for 30 years for the trees to grow and mature, and then we'll cut them again. This creates a supply and demand that is consistent with the needs of our nation. Another thing that opposition has forgotten to mention is that deforestation also means, zero deforestation also means zero development. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, we need land to develop our nation. Where do we get the land? From the forest. We need to deforest. It is the hard truth. Deforestation cannot be stopped, but what we can do is that we can sustainably manage it through our policy. We can govern it, we can watch it, and we can regulate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I believe a lot of some of your points regarding the development points. Firstly, we already have the land that we need to actually develop. We can just like use the land, reuse it in like more effective ways. For example, building like more compact houses instead of suburban hell, like actual suburban hell. For example, like the ones in BTA show, the ones in like Kota Damansara and all. Like build more compact land.
Nasiruddin,
yeah,
your time's up.
With that, in conclusion, I've proved to you why the forestry economy is not important. I've brought out a comparison between us and a similar country and how they tackle this issue and how the manpower of this can be reinvested into other industries. With that, opposition for zero deforestation. Thank you.
Right, calling for the next debater, Davitra anak perempuan Ramachandran daripada Barisan Kerajaan.
Dengan izin Yang di-Pertua Speaker Dewan, saya ingin memohon untuk berbahasa Inggeris bagi membahas usul pada hari ini. Honourable Speaker, hardworking members of the House, ladies and gentlemen, I am standing here today to stand firm with the motion that this House agrees that sustainable forest management is a better approach than zero deforestation. Now that we have listened to the members of the House speaking, you might have a general idea on the issue, but how serious can it be? Now, consider the notion of zero deforestation. Does it truly ensure long-term sustainability? Instead, envisage a scenario where trees are harvested but simultaneously replaced through robust reforestation efforts, ensuring a net gain in resources. This not only aids our beloved nation Malaysia in achieving its 2050 net zero emissions, target also establish sustainable forest management as a driver of economic growth, a source of import-export value, and a catalyst for sustainable tourism. Now, I would like to add on the previous rebuttal session just now.
Davitra, there are three yang ingin mencelah. Nak bagi
give
tidak?
me time, I need my time. Okay, so I would like to add on the previous rebuttal session just now. Even if we don't deforest for economic reasons, we still need to clear land for development reason, as in housing and for township development. Okay, so that answers your question just now. And then, as stated in the member of the government bench, according to Malaysian Forestry Department, Malaysia's carbon emissions in 2021 were 256 million tons. The country's forest can only absorb 185 tons of carbon dioxide per year. As of 2021, forest covers in Malaysia is 43.47% only. To offset the carbon emissions in 2021 alone, we would need to replant trees on 86% of the land. This shows that it is impossible to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 if we only focus on zero deforestation. If the opposition is serious about climate change, they should focus on regulating the burning of fossil fuels, not just planting trees. However, this is not the topic of discussion today. No. Madam Speaker, The second part of the proposed government policy is land allocation, which will go through the following process. First, preliminary assessment. This involves gathering information about the forest, such as biological diversity, soil conditions, and climate. Second, forest resources assessment. This involves a more detailed assessment of the forest resources, such as the number of and the size of trees, the amount of timber, and the presence of non-timber products. Third, participation and consultation. This involves involving all stakeholders, such as local communities, government agencies, and businesses in the planting process. And this is our most important part. Number 4, setting management objective. This involves setting goals to the forest, such as maintaining its biodiversity, providing timber, protecting water resource, or ecotourism. Number 5, zoning or stratifying the forest area. This involves dividing the forest into different zones, each with its own management objective. Okay, I open to one. Yep. Anyone?
Sekejap ya, saya nak tanya balik kepada Muhammad Haris. Is that you? Yeah. Sorry? Do you Muhammad Humairi, do you have a question atau nak pass kepada kawan? An actual question.
Don't worry, Madam Speaker. Dengan izin Puan Speaker, saya akan berucap dalam bahasa Inggeris. Madam Speaker, this Honourable Dewan, okay. It's quite clear that the government right now are much more focusing on getting the money rather than focusing on the welfare of the people, the climate of the Malaysia and the world. They think about cha-ching. That's all they're thinking about. They don't think about what will happen to the world. They don't care. They care about the pocket money. Now, my first question, the first speaker just now from the government said that, okay, we have implementation, we'll enforce it by, or if any loggers who does not comply to the sustainable policy, we will retract or cancel their license. Ladies and gentlemen, right now at the moment, we have a lot of illegal logging facing right now. By they're doing their policy, the illegal logging will be increased. And how does the government want to deal with it?
Okay, I'll give to my Prime Minister.
Okay. Come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Government Speaker. Okay, so a lot of things to dissect from the speech, okay? So one of the things being said is about regulation, right? How will we ensure that the illegal logging does not go berluluasa and all that, okay, right? So the thing is that if you guys follow the MTCS scheme and the MTCS mainframe suggested by the MTCC, the Malaysian Timber Certification Council, you will see that there is a paper trail of the trees and the timber that goes through the process of being cut down from the forest all the way to the sales on the stores. There is a paper trail at every level and every section. So this is clear cut that things like illegal logging can be cracked down upon. When you have zero deforestation, ladies and gentlemen, how are you going to control it? How are you going to monitor it? How are you going to supervise it? Because it is net zero. Okay. Another thing is that since Kumairi has brought up the issue of climate change and why the government doesn't care about climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, if the opposition truly cares about climate change, they wouldn't be arguing here on deforestation. They'll be arguing against using fossil fuels, moving into renewable resources. The motion here today is not only about climate change because replanting the forest alone does not really address the issues of climate change at the core. We understand what you mean, but it is a blanket solution that doesn't solve the underlying issue. At the future, this will exacerbate and will cause more problems for the people. Please think about the people. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm not opening anything. Okay, so furthermore, as we safeguard our forest resources and engage in reforestation within reserve, we also have the opportunity to produce and promote sustainable tourism. This synergy between economic growth and sustainable forest management, particularly evident through sustainable tourism promotion. Reforestation efforts conserve flora and fauna, offering a splendid backdrop to showcase an exquisite forest. This is where ecotourism comes into play, a sustainable form of nature-focused tourism that emphasizes education and responsible, low-impact practices. By leveraging this unique offering, we can entice global visitors to explore the treasure of Malaysia. In conclusion, I would like to strongly stand with the motion that this House agrees that sustainability forest management is a better approach rather than zero deforestation. Is a win-win solution and beneficial for every party in this country. I will open to my Minister.
Hello, right.
So a couple of things, right? Just now the side opposition have said that we only care about money. We don't really care about the global issues. We don't care about climate change. However, I would like to ask this one question to the opposition. Sure, we might save the country in 10 years or 20 years' time, but why not we look right now? I am not going to let my people starve for the one whole year and cannot send their kids to school just because in 10 years' time they can survive, in which my side government have already proposed and already showed that just by replanting forests doesn't really work and doesn't really give that much effect to the whole idea of combating climate change. And also one thing I would like to note, that I've noticed that the side opposition have not really attacked our mechanism. It shows that our mechanism works. So what are you guys talking about? I guess just being against us as a whole, or just don't know what you guys doing here. If you guys really are against us, attack our mechanism and we'll listen to that. Thank you.
Bendera, okay. Daniel Iskandar, go ahead.
All right, so you mentioned that we didn't attack your mechanism, and you mentioned that we don't care about, okay, clearly the government just thinks of what's going to happen next year and not what happens in 10 years and 20 years. Guys, if you have no home, if you have no land in 20 years, you can look at them lah. Okay, because we're thinking in the future, we're thinking of our people in the long run. Thank you for thinking of tomorrow, because I can do that, a 5-year-old can do that, but you as the government should be thinking of the future, not just 1 year. And on top of that, you said township development. We need to improve on township development. Well, then explain to me the 500 million ringgit of landed territories in Malaysia that are abandoned. Explain that. If your township development needs to be developed so badly, explain that. Why can't we just develop on the land that we already have instead of praying to God that land will fall from the sky? Thank you.
I've noticed a lot of movements. I mean, I can do that movements too if I want to prove a point. As I said multiple times, I'm not sure if you were listening or not, Yang Berhormat, but just a bit more. But sustainable forest management or no zero-deforestation and replanting trees will not have much effects to the climate change. We will address another issue, for example, fossil fuel usage, consumption of our people. By addressing that, then only we can combat climate change. By implementing either side of the House policy, we will not be able to combat climate change. In 10 years' time, if we do not address other more concerning issues, we will have no land either way. It is just a matter of which House does better, and I've said in my speech and my members' speech that we can do it better, and we're sure of it. Thank you.
Right, thank you. And moving on to the next debater, Lim San Chien, daripada Barisan Pembangkang.
Okay, very good morning to Madam Speaker. Selamat pagi. Izinkan saya menggunakan bahasa English untuk berucap. Today, the opposition here stand and feel that we need to strongly advocate for zero deforestation, because we stand here firm and steady to propose that zero deforestation is the better and most feasible way to save our Mother Earth, considering the suffering of people, the nature disaster that occur in our nation and worldwide. Our globe will disappear soon, and we need to do something in order to make sure we can mitigate the effect. First, to give a context, forestry and logging industry are important, but it's only contributed to a partial of the GDP. The main sector contributing to the GDP are actually services, manufacturing, mining, agriculture, and construction. Every coin has two sides, so every decision will create a ripple of effect that we need to consider. It's important to consider that zero deforestation will be a beneficial policy for the government and for the people, which will be a total ban on the forest cutting, and no forest will be cleared and converted. Zero deforestation will firstly amplify the impact of our effort and commitments to protect the environment, and we are here today to stress the protection of forests is both our government and opposition effort, and it should involve the whole of society and whole of government approach. Illegal logging happens even though we have Forestry Act, Environmental Quality Act, all these state ordinance. And you can see Sarawak actually recorded the most cases of illegal logging, followed by Perak and Kelantan. So what is the effect of you trying to say you want to have new laws of sustainable forest management? I don't think it's feasible. And can you prove whether it's really practical or it's just a rhetoric of politics that you try to portray to the people to buy in votes for the government? According to AME research, tree replanting, which is proposed by government.
Lim Sachen, sorry, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ya, yang ingin mencelah. Nak bagi laluan ke tidak?
Sekejap lagi saya bagi. Sekejap lagi. Okay, so according to AMER research, tree replanting takes time. As proposed by the government, they want to do tree planting. So a reduction in the tree cover will actually increase the likelihood of surface water runoff, soil erosion, rise in sea level, and make it easier for flooding, and will also cause landslide. So zero deforestation will actually restore and rebuild the balance in ecosystem and minimize the environmental impact. As we know, every project we need to submit environmental impact assessment. And indeed, we can see there are still a lot of companies who are not following these laws and cause like flood, disruption to the economy, and also damage to the human life and property. One simple question before I allow any interruption to the government. Can you answer? Will the government want to be held accountable and responsible when there's any flood, landslide, damage to property, life? Because that is going to cost life. People are dying, and there are a lot of animals are dying. The millions of dollars are cost to restore and rebuild our nation and homeland. Okay.
From side opposition, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Speaker, one thing that I would like to note is that the difference between the two policies is that they have no deforestation at all, while we have sustainable forest management. We will still replenishing this forest. It's not to say they will chop up all of the forests in Malaysia, no control. No, what we're going to do is we're going to make it sustainably. We're going to plant more trees, and we've proven in our statement that we can plant more trees than all of you guys can. Right, and one thing I would like to note that the speaker just now said something very insensitive, saying that it's just a partial income of our GDP. It might be partial, but 140,000 people in the industry is not partial at all. Those are the rakyat who voted for us, who wants us to be responsible for their welfare and for their future. And we cannot put them aside. Like I said just now, and I would like to strongly emphasize, show me that you can prove, you can transition these 140 people in this timber industry into a future, in another industry in 1 year time. Because I know for sure, re-educating and reskilling time takes years. Maybe we can reconsider in the future, but right now it is not practical at all for us to go for no deforestation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer. First of all, you're talking about replanting tree. Do you sure that the land is fertile enough to replant the tree? And is it suitable to replant again? And how many trees you want to replant? Do you have the enough commitment from the company want to cooperate with the government? Or they think it's a waste of effort because it's not giving them the return on investment, because everything the company is thinking about profit, thinking about ROI, return on investment. If you ask the company to plant a tree, what is it? Is it good for their business, good for their profit? No, I don't think so. The company will not follow you.
A bit only. We have already explained to you that if they do not follow our scheme, we will revoke their license. They cannot prioritize their profit anymore, because at the risk, either you profit a bit or no profit at all. It shows they will have to abide to our law.
Okay.
Okay, terima kasih Madam Speaker. Izinkan saya bertanyakan soalan dalam bahasa Inggeris. So, ladies and gentlemen, my learned friend Bentany says that if, and I quote, if the company doesn't follow and replant the trees, you will tarik their license, right? That was what the government had proposed. Now, my question is, let's say if they don't, how are you going to make sure that they don't do illegal logging? Because again, illegal logging, as mentioned by our speakers, is an issue in Malaysia. And my second question is that you have been banging on about profit. However, what's the issue with profit if the people lose their lives? People in Taman Sri Muda, in Jelebu, the place where there's the least amount of rain in Malaysia was flooded in 2021. And there were a lot of kayu balak. So that is something that the government has failed to address. Thank you.
Do we still have time, Madam Speaker?
Okay. Go ahead. One minute.
Okay, so here I think where we have a misunderstanding here. Okay, the government does not to say that we do not care about the climate or the environment, but what we are saying from the get-go is that there needs to be a balance between the both worlds. You cannot save the victims of natural disasters and throw the people in the logging industry under the bus. Let them suffer the consequences. At the same time, you cannot coddle this industry and let people to die in natural disasters. So what the government is proposing is a sustainable forest management where we get the best of both worlds. we can have positive action for our climate, for our nature, to prevent all these natural disasters. At the same time, we are keeping the industry afloat, and we are making it more sustainable, and we are making it more transparent. Because with this scheme, it is very transparent. You can see everything, and that's why the experts will definitely increase. Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker, can I have 1 minute to sum up everything?
1 minute.
Yeah, 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Okay.
Go ahead.
So I would like to address just briefly a question that about revoking the license if they not replant a tree. So first of all, you were afraid and make the investor fear because the license will be revoked if they don't replant a tree. So you will reduce the DDI or the FDI, which is the domestic direct investment and also the foreign direct investment because of the fear that their license will be revoked. So this is not good for the nation economy as a whole. So last, zero-deforestation for the opposition side will also enhance Malaysia's standing in the world. For example, SDG, Goal 15, life on land, and also to fulfill the goals under Paris Agreement. So deforestation is also a very serious problem that erodes and take away the orang asli land, which is from the aborigine. For example, Pahang suffered the largest single forest loss for 2 decades in what had been a forest reserve till the late 2020. So in conclusion, we, no matter you are government or opposition, we believe that we should go for zero deforestation because it's in the best interest of a nation. And we need to have clear goal to preserve the environment and also demonstrate our commitments. Use tangible solution, which is zero deforestation, and prosper as a nation. We dedicate to lead Malaysia in this transformative journey. It might not be easy at the first because we are used to deforestation. But we need to use zero deforestation as the best approach, as the necessary decision to make, which is for the best interest of nation, to reduce any carbon or climate change, as we witness the desperation of our people to struggle to live every time when there's a landslide, climate change, and also flood. So we need to live for a cause, not for applause. Let's work together to save our forests and preserve our Mother Earth. Thank you.
Adi Sesen Nair, anak lelaki Vasudevan, dijemput untuk menggulung.
Mic check. Terima kasih, Madam Speaker. Dengan izin, Madam Speaker. Honourable Speaker and esteemed members of the House, today's discourse has illuminated two divergent approaches to address our pressing forest management concerns. Sustainable forest management versus zero deforestation. While both viewpoints hold merit, it's evident that the government's proposed policy stands at the most comprehensive and effective solution. The Prime Minister adeptly underscored the complexity of our challenges, touching on deforestation, resource depletion, habitat destruction, and ecosystem prevention, and climate change mitigation. The proposed policy seeks a harmonious equilibrium between environmental protection and economic process. This approach duly acknowledged the significant role of the logging industry, contributing a substantial 23.3 billion to our GDP and providing livelihoods for 140,000 Malaysians and 1 million more indirectly. Examining the opposition stance, their genuine concern for climate change is commendable. However, their focus may be misaligned. Their commitment to combat climate change does not necessarily address the intricacy of forest management. Moreover, they did not provide a comprehensive strategy for reskilling workers and oversight that raises question about the practicality of their approach. The opposition assertion that 22.5 billion is an insignificant contribution to GDP warrants care for full consideration. This value represents a considerable portion of economy output and provides livelihood for numerous families. Their claim failed to account for the broad socio-economic impact such an industry sustains. Critically, the government proposed policy addresses a crucial point raised by the opposition: the potential for flooding due to logging activities. While sustainable forest management advocates for selective logging, it is essential to ensure that the government's logging activity is not conducted in areas that could lead to flooding. This aligns with our responsibility of safeguarding communities and habitats while enabling responsible resource extraction. In evaluating this perspective, the government's proposed policy remains the most holistic response by integrating the framework that balances economic viability with ecological preservation. It's a form of solid foundation for the future. The mandatory forest replenishment and replantation initiative addresses both sides of the argument, combining environmental preservation and economic responsibility in a shared endeavor. The government strategy also also champions collaboration and shared responsibility, mitigating potential job losses, and nurturing sustainable industries. With provision for reskilling workers, our policy ensures a smooth transition for those potentially affected. In conclusion, the government's proposed sustainable forest management policy strikes as a harmonious balance between environmental protection and economic prosperity. As I repeat, it presents a balanced, practical, and responsible approach that safeguards our forests, jobs, and future. By enacting this policy, we chart a course that unites our collective efforts towards a sustainable and prosperous Malaysia. This policy, its provision for responsible logging and mitigating flood risk is not only aligned with economic growth, but also underscores our commitment towards environmental stewardship. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Jadi sekarang dipersilakan Yang Berhormat Datuk Teresa, Ahli Parlimen Julau, dan disusuli Yang Berhormat Puan Teresa Kok, Ahli Parlimen Seputeh, untuk memberi pandangan-pandangan. Dipersilakan.
Terima kasih. Terima kasih kepada Puan Yang Dipertua. Natural forest plays an important and valuable resource that contributes significantly towards the economy and environmental well-being. In terms of forest conservation and management according to the Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, total forested area in 2022 is 18.05 billion hectares, slightly decreased of 0.5% from 18.14 million hectares in 2021. Malaysia is committed to the concept of sustainable development, which addresses issues relating to environmental protection and preservation. Malaysia is also actively involved both at the regional and international levels to promote sustainability and legality in the timber industry. To ensure at least 50% of Malaysia's land area remains forested, Malaysia adheres to the principle of sustainable forest management, SFM. SFM refers to the stewardship and use of forests and forested lands in a way that maintains their biodiversity, productivity, regeneration capacity, vitality, and the potential to fulfill relevant ecological, economic, and social functions at local, national, and global levels. SFM is carried out through proper and well-documented procedures, which allows for the responsible use of forest resources, including timber and non-timber products. This balanced approach ensures that communities and industries can benefit from our forests without causing irreversible damage. SFM takes into account forest boundary demarcations, forest pre- and post-felling inventories, minimum cutting limits, timber tagging, and tree marking, directional felling, guidelines for harvesting and post-harvest surveys, and specification for road and buffer zones near water courses to mitigate soil erosion. Putting SFM into practice requires substantive financial and human resources, as well as the application of new and appropriate technologies to ensure its success. Puan Yang Dipertua, Malaysia should not be regarded as a high-risk country for deforestation. With more than a century of forest management experience, sustainability has long been a commitment of the various timber and forest agencies in the country. In addition, Malaysia encourages SFM through forest certifications that, among others, include Malaysian Timber Certification Scheme, programs for the endorsement of forest certification, or PEFC, and other internationally recognized schemes. These schemes continuously support the trade in timber and timber products that use timber originating from sustainable and legal sources that consider the environmental, social, and economic aspects of SFM. Malaysian Timber Certification Scheme is a voluntary domestic certification scheme operated by the Malaysian Timber Certification Council. MTCS has become the first tropical timber certification scheme in the Asia-Pacific region and has been endorsed by the Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification since 1st May 2009. It gives further assurance that forests certified under MTCS are implementing the best management practices and contributing to the challenging efforts to achieve SFM, particularly for the Malaysian forests. PEFC endorsement means that the MTCS is mutually recognized by 27 other PEFC endorsed certification schemes, As such, the MTCS scheme has been accepted by more than a dozen countries as providing independent assurance of legally and sustainably sourced timber. MTCS provides independent assessment for sustainable forest management practices and audits timber product manufacturers and exporters. To ensure credibility, robustness, and acceptance of the scheme among local and international stakeholders, MTCC strives to ensure MTCS endorsement with PEFC remains updated and meets international requirements. Forest management certification covers social, environmental, and economic aspects as stipulated in the MTCS ST 1002-2021 Malaysian Criteria and Indicators for Sustainable Forest Management, which is used for certification of forest management of natural forests and forest plantations in Malaysia. Puan Yang di-Pertua, Malaysia is continuously aligning with global requirements for legality and certification in the timber industry. Hence, Malaysia has developed its Timber Legality Assurance System, or TILAS, to ensure that the country's timber industry continues to remain sustainable and competitive in the international market. The principles of TILAS in Malaysia comprise of 6 principles, such as the right to harvest, forest operations, statutory charges, other users' rights, mill operations, and trade and customs. Malaysia commenced implementation of MyTILAS and Sabah TILAS to ensure the legality of its timber and timber products exported to the EU. Similarly, Sarawak has also implemented its Sarawak Timber Legality Verification System, or STLVS, to strengthen the traceability of its legal timber production supply chain. MTIB has been developing MyTILAS since 2012, and the issuance of MyTILAS certification for export purposes to European Union countries started in February 2013. MyTILAS covers timber and timber products derived from logs harvested from natural forests and plantation forests, whether in PRF, state land, or alienated land. It also includes rubber wood from replanting operations and imported timber, which complies with Peninsular Malaysia's import regulations. A total of 12 timber and timber products are covered in the scope of MyTILAS. Beginning in 1st January 2022, the MyTILAS certification has been extended for exports to all destinations. From 2013 until July 2023, about 109,730 MyTILAS certifications have been issued, with the highest certificates issued comprised of molding, sawn timber, and BJC. Puan Yang di-Pertua, with the quest for sustainable development, Malaysia recognizes industrial tree plantations as one of the solutions to augment the shortfall of timber supplies to sustain the development of downstream wood-based industries. It's also another government initiative to combat deforestation and at the same time ensuring sustainable raw material supply and the timber industry. Under the 9 Malaysia Plan, the government introduced a new policy known as Forest Plantation Development Program, or PPLH, with allocation of 1.045 billion ringgit to develop 375,000 hectares of plantation, with an annual planting target of 25,000 hectares over a 15-year period. However, in 2010, the ambition was scaled down to 130,000 hectares after rationalizing against the high investment costs. PPLH supports rehabilitation of degraded forests, encroached forests, unproductive state lands, and poorly stocked forest areas through planting of high-value and fast-growing timber species. Through the provision of low-rate loan facility, PPLH has ensured active participation of the private sector in the development of commercial forest plantation. It's a long-term program that will complement other sustainable forest management practices to provide the necessary safeguards to conserve our natural forests for its economic and ecological services. Once successfully implemented, the planted area is expected to produce 26 million cubic meters of timber, a total of 126,457.99 hectares of forest plantations nationwide, involving 82 agreements by 70 companies were developed under PPLH 1.0 that was carried out in 2007 and ended in 2020. Aligning with the government's concern to ensure continuous supply of raw materials for the timber industry, an allocation of 500 million ringgit loan was provided for PPLH 2.0 under the 12 Malaysia Plan. PPLH 2.0 was carried out for the period between 2021 to 2025, with a target of 50,000 hectares during the said period. Of the 11 selected species, 2 major species related are rubberwood, acacia, teak, sentang, kaya, kelampayan, or what are known as laran, batai, binuang, bamboo, paulownia, and eucalyptus. Malaysia is among the leading tropical countries that manage to retain forests covering more than 50% of land area, while remaining one of the major producers of timber and timber-based products. This is a balanced approach between the safeguarding the environment and economic development. This is congruent with the pledge made in the Rio Earth Summit in 1982, COP Copenhagen 2009, and recently UN Sustainable Development Goals. Malaysia has demonstrated that sustainable management of forests and controlled conversion of forests to non-forested land area, coupled with reforestation activities through the establishment of forest plantations, can help optimize land use and retain significant forest coverage in the country. It also enhances the existing forest carbon stocks and simultaneously create new carbon sinks in the form of forest plantations. Yang di-Pertua. In summary, SFM offers a more comprehensive and flexible approach that seeks to balance conservation with responsible resources use and long-term environmental goals. Thank you.
Dipersilakan.
Ya, terima kasih Puan Speaker. Saya nak tanya kepada pihak kerajaan dan juga pembangkang atas poin-poin yang dibangkitkan tadi berkenaan satu topik yang amat penting bagi negara kita. Puan Speaker, speaking in English, for Malaysia, for we Malaysian, we don't realize that how important is forest to our, economy. But as government, since the late 80s, 1980s until today, we always, when we want to push our Malaysian product to the Western markets, EU, United States, and so on, we are always battling on this issue on deforestation because of the anti-tropical timber campaign and also anti-palm oil campaign. So before I go on, I think I want to start with the argument from the opposition that mentioned basically is SFM, Sustainable Forest Management, causes deforestation. Therefore, let's do away SFM in order to achieve zero deforestation. That's your point. And then this assumption is that logging activities, regardless, they are conducted according to sustainable principles, are to be regarded as deforestation. This is a serious misunderstanding and disinformation on this topic on deforestation in Malaysia. This is what the Western countries accuse Malaysia. Before I go on, I want to point out to the opposition, zero deforestation means no deforestation. But there is another term is zero net deforestation, meaning that an area deforested is to be compensated with a forest elsewhere. So you go to do Google search, you will find this. One is zero deforestation, another is zero net deforestation. They are different. So the kerajaan side, how come you all didn't rebut? Homework not enough. And then they talk about landslide. Oh, SFM, cause the deforestation. Therefore, other, tanah runtuh, landslide, happen. Hey, excuse me, your kerajaan, landslide happen not because of deforestation or illegal logging only. It's also because of suddenly, rainfall, excessive rainfall during short period of time, like in KL. All this while we don't have the tree or hutan, no illegal logging. It's a overdevelopment. You can talk about the drainage infrastructure. This kerajaan, you didn't mention this. Within a short span of time, there's nothing to do with the illegal logging in Kelantan or elsewhere. Okay, Puan Speaker, I think I want to share this point, which I think for young people like your Malaysian future politicians, future MPs, very important, is to understand the land use, in Malaysia. Basically, in Malaysia, there are two types of land. One is hutan, forest. Another one is the non-forest. Okay, two types. Under the forested land, on the forested land, they are divided into three categories. Number one is totally protected area. like the national parks, wildlife, bird and nature reserves, that is totally protected area. Number 2 is permanent forest reserve, we also call PRF, permanent forest reserve. And number 3 is the state land forest. So non-forest land, are utilized for agriculture, industries, settlements, infrastructure purposes. That's why, we are here. It's supposed to be hutan, right? But now KL, Bukit Pintang developed into a city. So, so there is a flaw to equate SFM, logging or even forest plantation activities happening in a permanent reserve forest as deforestation. So it's wrong. So actually this part, for me, I think that the government should, right from the start, you should mention about the 2 categories of land use and the different categories of the forested area. Okay, and under every country has the right to develop our economy and also our resources. You see, there are 2. You see, the government side also forget to mention why we are debating this today. Is because we are being whacked, in the international forum. But you did not mention about, in Malaysia in 1992, our former Prime Minister in the Earth Summit at Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, that means it's soon Dr. Mahathir, he had pledged, to the international community that Malaysia will always have 50% of forest reserve. Do you know until today, we have 54% of foreign reserve, This is according to the Ministry, Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change Ministry data. So this point, this is what you should rebut them, we still have 54%, although we promise to the world we are going to keep 50% of our forest reserve. And also under the United Convention on Biodiversity, called UNCBD, under this convention, clause number 2, that number 2 says that every country, every member state of this convention, CBD, that Malaysia is a member, we are allowed to use our natural resources, but in a sustainable manner. So this is something that, today we talk about forests is because of the international, convention and a forum. This is something that you should use to rebut the opposition, which, you did not raise this point. And here, this is how I listen about the MTCs, Malaysia Timber Certification Council. We have a certificate, MTCS. The opposition talk about illegal logging, in the forested PDF area and so on. Actually, the government should talk about what? If you defend this certificate, then you should say that, this certificate under MTIB board is very serious. Kedah, Kelantan, Johor have lost the status of this certification because of illegal logging. So you have to rebut them by telling them that, this certificate is, is very strict, even to our state government. If they don't abide the requirement of this certification, they lose the status. And then, lose the status meaning what? Your furniture, nowadays, in the Western countries, those who import our Malaysian product, they are talking about traceability of your product. Meaning that your furniture, right, our furniture, when we export to Europe, or our wood, export to Europe, they will trace from where was the wood from. So if they found out that they are from these 3 states that I mentioned, they will send back the product to you. They are not going to use your product. So it is that strict. So this is something that for Malaysia, how the government try to protect our commodity by requiring the timber industry, furniture industry, and even the palm oil industry to come up with our certification, our requirements to ensure sustainable production of our commodity industry and commodity industry products. So here I would like to also very briefly mention, because this is for your knowledge, that, for Malaysian palm oil, because our oil is the most efficient oil, we compete against the European, their sunflower oil, whatever, no soybean oil. So they always let us say that our oil palm industry encroach into the forestry area. Therefore, they reject our palm oil because they say, eating palm oil means kill the orang-utan. Okay, this is very simplistic kind of arguments from the Western countries. They even teach this to kindergarten school children. So this is something that as Malaysian, how you need to defend. In 2019, okay, when I was the ministry as a minister of primary industries, that means now is the plantation, commodity plantation industry. In 2019, the cabinet had approved 4 points. Remember, 4 points on the palm oil to make our Malaysian palm oil production sustainable. Number one, we kept the expansion of oil palm plantation. No more expansion of oil palm plantation. We kept it at 6.5 million hectares. Now it's 5.85 million hectares. We kept it at 6.5 million. Number two, no more conversion of permanent forest reserve, PRFs, to plant oil palm. No more encroaching into that. Number three, no development no planting of oil palm in pit soil, tanah gambut, pit soil. And number four is we want to open up our land, the oil palm plantation land, to the world. Whoever want to trace where the palm oil come from, that the import come from, they can come to the website. They can trace it easily. So the Malaysian palm oil, we always argue that we plant in oil palm, we plant in a very sustainable manner. So this is something that we need to know. So lastly, we have to defend our commodity products, because you cannot say Malaysia. You look at Brunei, then investors say look at Singapore, no land, no forest. But so we have the right, just as I mentioned, under international convention, to develop our land, to our natural resources in a sustainable way. So these are the points that we all should, defend our area. We also need to realize that, SFM, we should protect this, defend this sustainable forest management. As long as our country, our forests, we are still within that 50% of the land size, we should be proud of. And I just want to also let you all know that, we always heard that the Western countries say that on planting oil palm cause deforestation, right? We encroach into a forest. Do you know that in certain countries, oil palm trees are regarded as forestry species? But for Malaysia, we are very honest. Oil palm is plantation way, so we don't regard this oil palm, we don't categorize it into the permanent forest, forestry species. In some certain countries, pokok getah, rubber trees, they are regarded as forestry species. But in Malaysia, because we have this rubber tree plantation, therefore rubber tree plantation, we have huge, many million size hectares of rubber tree plantation. We also take it up. They are not regarded as the forestry species. So we need to tell the world that Malaysia, besides the 54% of the forestry area, we have this oil palm, we have these rubber trees. They are actually, in some countries, regarded as forestry species. We have taken them out. So we actually, it's a very green country, in Malaysia. We really have, some Masalay come to Malaysia, they see that, oh, your country, how come it's such a green country? Yes, we are. But it's not enough. I think we all need to work on to manage our natural resources, to also adhere to all these international requirements, including our certifications, to make sure that our products can be exported, welcomed by the world. Okay, thank you, Puan Speaker.
Terima kasih. Jadi ahli-ahli perwakilan Debaton Parlimen Belia, sekarang saya kemukakan masalah kepada majlis bagi diputuskan. Masalahnya ialah bahawa usul 2 daripada barisan kerajaan seperti yang tertera dalam aturan urusan mesyuarat hari ini di nombor 2 hendaklah disetujukan. Ahli-ahli perwakilan Debaton Parlimen Belia yang bersetuju, kata bersetuju. Yang tidak bersetuju, kata tidak. Jadi lebih suara yang It's not easy being the speaker, is it? Jadi lebih suara yang tidak setuju. Jadi usul dipersetujukan. Jadi ahli-ahli perwakilan, persidangan ditempohkan sehingga selesai penyampaian anugerah pembahas terbaik usul 2.
Thank you, YB Puan Syerleena, for chairing the debate session. Thank you also to YB Datuk Teresa and YB Puan Teresa for contributing your opinions. Let's give everyone a round of applause. Moving on, the moment we all have been anticipating has come. Who is the best debater for this motion, topic 2? With that, I would like to invite YB Puan Syerleena along with YB Datuk Teresa and YB Puan Teresa to announce the winner, accompanied by the judges from MTCC, MIDP and Kini Events. The best debater will receive a trophy made from sustainable bala wood, sponsored by MTCC and a lifetime subscription from Malaysia Kini. The Best Debater Award goes to Bentani Oisi Kwan. Congratulations to the best debater, Bentani Oisi Kwan. For your information, all the debaters here will receive a free Malaysia Kini subscription for 3 months. For viewers out there, you are still able to vote for your favorite statements and most popular debater at the voting page for a month until the end of September. And on behalf of the organizer, I would like to once again graciously thank to our partners, Malaysian Timber Certification Council, supporting partner Parliament of Malaysia and Ministry of Youth and Sports, all co-partners and media partners. The next motion, topic 3, is Akta Perubahan Iklim. We will see you all back at 2 p.m. in this hall. Thank you.